right now. So we are recording. Okay, everyone, thank you again. This is Sue Lynn Jones. I am the LSTA coordinator for the Nevada State Library, and we're here to talk about the proposal process for 2020 competitive grants. If you aren't going to do a competitive grant, you're just interested in a mini grant, you're welcome to stay. I'm going to do a mini grant webinar later in the process, so maybe in about February. And we'll go over the mini grant requirements and the deadlines. This is pretty much focused on just the competitive grants, but there will be information for you. So yeah, please stay if you feel like it. Okay, so first up on the agenda, we're going to talk about LSTA. I always like to give a little background about why LSTA exists before we do anything. I figure if we know why it's here, we can meet its purposes and priorities better. We're going to talk about the available grants for this upcoming federal year, 2020, the competitive grant proposal process, deadlines. I know I'm very deadline driven, so we have deadlines, and then the 2020 LibGuide. Just kind of really quickly go over it. This is where everything will be. I've tried to put every bit of paperwork and guidance into this LibGuide. It probably can be overwhelming at times and difficult to navigate, but we'll just go over that. Okay, does anyone have any questions or comments at this point? I don't expect this to take more than an hour. I hear somebody. Okay, all right, let's move on. Okay, so the history of LSTA. You know, funding for libraries seems to have always been a problem, and back in the 50s, in the early 50s, post-war boom, ALA persuaded Congress to authorize $7.5 million a year for 5 years to help improve library services in the rural areas. We're trying to get libraries out to communities that really didn't have a tax base, that couldn't afford it, and so this is how we started. All through your advocacy, actually. So it wasn't me, it wasn't us, it wasn't the state libraries doing it, it was ALA. Right, in 1962, because it was so successful. Oh, and I want to point out, Nevada played a very big role in this. Jeff Kintop, if you ever see him, ask him to tell you a story about it. In 1962, the Library Services Act was reauthorized and expanded to include more than just rural libraries, pretty much all types of libraries, and it also authorized that the money be able to be used for construction, and it wasn't before. So now we could start building libraries. And so for 30 plus years, we used this money to build our libraries out. And then in 1996, it was reauthorized and reconfigured again with input from ALA and from COSLA and from all the library users, and it was sort of transformed into from construction to technology. So we figured, you know, the building boom might be over, now we have to get our infrastructure and our technology up to speed. And so that's where we are. We've been doing some sort of Library Services and Technology Act in some form for the past, what's the math, 70 years, 60 something years? So this is where we came from, okay? And so where we are right now, it's the Library Services and Technology Act. It does get reauthorized every single year. It just got updated last year. Some, you know, new provisions were put into it. This is basically the strategic plan for libraries in the United States, and it's put in the US code. And so that's all well and good, but what we really care about is US Code 9141, which is the Grants to States program, and that is what authorizes the funding to happen. This is what gets us our money. So we have the strategic plan, but we can't really do anything without money to fund projects and goals and objectives. I'm sorry, money to fund projects that help us meet our goals and objectives. So if you want to know about what USC 9141 is, it is right here. The sections that I particularly like are number 3. We are authorized by federal law to provide training and professional development, where libraries are the only, I think, federal agency. I mean, IMLS is the only federal agency that's allowed to use federal money to provide training. So I think that's super important. And yeah, that's where we are. So in addition to the federal code, we have our own state five-year plan. In order to get the federal money that's authorized, we have to have a 5-year plan that shows how we're going to spend it. And this is our 5-year plan. These are our 4 goals. Every project that we do needs to do something to advance one of these 4 goals. And these 4 goals in turn advance these 8 goals of the federal government, okay? So we have our goals. This is how much money we usually can expect to get. You can see 5 years, our award is based on population. So the more people we have, the more money we get to advance library goals. But it's not only based on population, it's based on our maintenance of effort. So if you've ever heard me say you can't use LSTA to replace local responsibility, so you can't use LSTA to replace funding that your local government should be allocating to help you do your business. It's the same with us. We can't use LSTA. The state of Nevada can't use LSTA to replace local responsibility. And if we don't meet our maintenance of effort, we get docked. And some states, last year there were 5 states who didn't meet maintenance of effort, and so their award was reduced and it was redistributed to the states that did meet maintenance of effort. So it's really hard to know what we'll get every year. We know what we'll probably get based on population, but we never know what we'll get based on any kind of maintenance of effort turnbacks. But I expect for 2020, we'll have about the same amount, 1.84 million. Does anyone have any questions about that? Why we're doing this and how much money we get? Okay. And so yes, so we have this 1.84 million in Nevada to advance library services, and we do that 2 ways. We have statewide programs, includes talking books, rural bookmobile support, emerging technologies, continuing education, as I mentioned, all of the databases that we have. So we set aside some money for that. And then we do subgrants to eligible libraries. That's you guys. What's an eligible library? It's outlined right here. You have to be supported by public revenues or be a nonprofit. So it's that local responsibility again. You have to have a local responsibility. At least 51% of your budget needs to be public revenues. You have to have some sort of classification system, and you have to participate in Information Nevada. And I've had questions about what that means, and it's basically you agree to make your collections borrowable. Like you agree to loan your stuff out to anyone who needs it through the interlibrary loan system. Okay. So in addition to that, if you're a public library, you have to meet minimum public library standards. School libraries, you have to have at least 1 certified library media specialist, and on and on. So those are the eligibility requirements. Oh, I guess that's it. Anyone have questions? I know I'm kind of going over this really quickly because I'm making the assumption that I've already spoken to this before, but I tend to do that a lot, and I don't want to. So if I've said anything that doesn't make sense or you'd like more clarification on, please let me know. Okay. All right. Okay. So here are our available subgrants for 2020. We introduced this at NLA last week, outlined our plan. I know in 2019, we didn't do competitive subgrants. I'm here to reassure you that we are going back to that this year, and I will show you how. We sat down and Tammy and I and Norma, we've tried to really figure out the best way to take this federal money and do the best we possibly could with it, right? And that meant keeping money for statewide programs, which we do, and it also, we had to find a balance on how we keep money and how we get it out to you so you can also advance library priorities in your community. And so we, based on, a historical scan of the projects we funded over the past 5 years, it seemed that 30% of our award is a completely a good number to commit to. It's reasonable. We can make it work. I think you can make it work. Other states, they set aside less, and that's, I think, more difficult to help you. So anyway, 30%. So if we get $1.84 million, am I saying that right? 1,840,000, 1.84, yeah. If we get $1.84 million, 30% of that is 552,000 that's available for subgrants. And what that means, even more, we're gonna dice it apart even more. As I said, we tried to find a good balance between our needs and your needs, big libraries needs, little libraries needs. And I think this is a good balance. Going out into the field and doing site visits, it seemed that mini grants with rolling deadlines were really welcome, and so we're going to keep that. We're going to keep the travel to training. I call it scholarships because we've slightly changed it a bit, but it's pretty much travel to training if you need to attend any kind of professional development event. We have $1,500 per person per event. So it's not $1,500 per person, it's $1,500 per event, okay? And we have set aside $30,000 of our anticipated award just for that. And we have set aside $200,000 of our anticipated award for mini grants, which leaves approximately $322,000 to be awarded in the competitive grant process. We've changed the maximum award to $75,000. It was lowered from $100,000 to $75,000. But we are also aware that sometimes that just won't work for you. So we have instituted if you can, I'm tongue-tied, you can apply for a waiver. Just the waiver process is outlined in the proposal instructions, but if you need more federal support, justify it. Submit a secondary waiver budget that's got, you know, your extra funds that you need, and it will follow the whole process with your application. Okay, so about $322,000 in the competitive process, $200,000 for mini grants, $30,000 for travel to training. You can get one competitive grant, and you can get as many mini grants as you can handle, up to $10,000. Okay, so we hope that will help you with things like summer reading program and unanticipated programs that, you know, right now you have to figure out right now what you want to do next year for the competitive grant. And because these are large projects, they take more time to project manage and all that. But we figure the smaller grants need less time. Maybe you won't know what you need to do until next June. So rolling deadlines, you can have a competitive grant, mini grant. Does that make sense? Anyone want to say anything yet? All right, sweet. We'll just keep going on. Okay, so here's the process. For a competitive grant, we are requiring a proposal, we are requiring a first draft, and then there's the final application. I don't say that's required because if you decide after all that not to go through, you have your reasons, and we're not going to make you submit a final application. But we do want a proposal and we do want a first draft. And that's based on feedback from council members and a few of the subgrantees I've spoken to. It sort of forces deadlines and project management thoughts and all of that. I know I'm not speaking very well about that, but I think it helps the whole process to go through these iterations, you know, rinse, wash, repeat. So, and that's why this webinar is required. Oh, question? Comment? Is someone asking a question, or are you having a side conversation? I can't tell because it's kind of garbled. I'm not sure. Okay, anyway, so you will submit your proposal. There will be one cycle, and we'll get into deadlines pretty soon. Mini grants, there will be a single application. I'll do a webinar, as I said. We encourage you to reach out before you submit the application so we can talk it through so you don't spend a lot of time on the application when, anyway. But there won't be a proposal for the mini grants. And there won't be a proposal for travel to training either. You submit your application, we'll talk about it, we'll make funding recommendations, and okay. Okay, now we're going to talk about the proposal part. Again, these are for projects.
Susan?
Yes.
Sorry, hi, this is Amy
Hi.
Dodson.
Hey.
Quick question.
Sure.
Could you define the 4 funding cycles, what you mean by that?
Oh, sure. So in mini grants, we're going to have, maybe I should just go to, I'm going to share this screen. All right, do you see it? It says competitive grants, mini grants.
Yeah, I see it.
Okay, so those are the cycles. So the first cycle is the whole year, July 1 to June 30th, and the application will be due May 15th, right? So you've got a whole year, and the application's due on May 15th. So we'll award grants. Then cycle 2 would be for October 1 through June 30th, and the application will be due in the summer on August 15th, and we'll award funds, right? And we'll keep going through this until we are out of $200,000. And so I think it gives you more flexibility. If you you have a project that comes up, you have a thing that comes up, and it's October, you can apply for a grant, funds permitting. Okay. Make
okay,
sense?
thank you.
Okay. All right.
Yes,
now,
thank you.
All right. Now I'm going to go back to. All right. It should say the proposal on the screen, I hope. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. All right. So why are we demanding that you do a proposal? And it's for 2 reasons. It's your first draft. It's your idea. You have an idea. It may not be perfect. The budget may not be perfect, but it is literally the first draft. And things can change between your proposal and your final draft. But basically, we want you to think about it right now and sort of get your ideas formed. And then we also want to know who's going to be playing, who's going to be participating, and how much funding is going to be requested, because we don't like to be taken by surprise. Okay, so that's why it's required. When we look at your proposal, we'll look at these things: indication of need, planning, all of these things, and we'll just advise you on how we at the state library think the best way forward, how to proceed, what programs you might need, what activities you might need, what kind of supporting documents you might need, what data we'd like to see, right? So we will advise you with this proposal what needs fleshing out better, what maybe is not a good idea based on just our past experience with projects here at the State Library. So it's just basic consultation. You give us your idea and we will work with you to make something that we think will work. Okay. New for this year is a phone call. I am all about emails and texts, but sometimes it's just better to do this over the phone. Sometimes we look at proposals and applications, and despite Norma's years and years in libraries, we can't figure out exactly what you're trying to get at. Because words, sometimes words just don't convey things properly. So we're going to schedule phone calls in the application, in the proposal. You'll just tell us your preferred dates and times and methods and who's going to be there, and then we'll chat. And it will be pretty much informal, and it will help us really understand better what you're trying to do, what your project's trying to do, and the outcomes you're trying to reach. And then based on your proposal and that conversation, you know, we'll provide written feedback. Okay. And I'm basing this on my time in California applying for an LSTA grant. I had a lot of phone calls with the LSTA coordinator in California trying to like figure out the best way to like frame the grant, how to work out my budget. So I found it very helpful, so I hope you will find it very helpful. Okay. When you're doing the proposal, like my best advice is just totally be prepared. Know all of this stuff. Know your mission, vision, strategic plan. Know your community profile. Know where you can get demographics. Just be prepared. Okay. Now, I did an example. I'm going to pull it up. I'm going to try and share it. And it says new for 2020, more space to write. So yes, this year, because you told me I didn't give you enough space to tell you to tell us what you wanted to do, we have more space. Okay. Do you see that? It should say 2020 LSTA competitive proposal. Someone just type yes. Speak yes.
No.
No, you don't see it? Shoot.
No.
Okay, how about now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so this is what the proposal looks like. I think it's pretty basic. The first page is for us at the State Library. It tells us who you are, what you want to do, and how much in LSTA you're requesting, and who your target audience is. It's like this is meant to be the really quick overview so that when we start reading the rest, we understand what's going on. Section 3, so it's the need. You're going to tell us what your need is and provide some data. And then you're going to tell us what the solution is and tell us why your library is the best possible organization to provide this solution. And yeah, then we're going to have activities. So tell us what you're going to do. If you're going to buy things, if you're going to have instruction sessions, if you're going to create things, how you're going to take the budget and create stuff that will lead to outcomes. And then the outcomes, this is the good that your project will do for your target audience. And then you'll list your partners. And here's the budget. So just give us a quick overview of what you'd like. Add it up. Check your math. Again, none of this has to be perfect because it is the very, very first step. Here's where you will put when you want your phone call or Zoom chat. And there's really where you will sign it saying, you know, I'm going to submit this, but it doesn't obligate me to do anything and it doesn't obligate the state library to do anything. And then 7, you certify that you are eligible to apply for LSTA. So we don't go to your library and look at your books. You will just certify that you are eligible. Okay. And then here are the instructions. And as I said, none of this has to be perfect at this point, but we do want an overview of what you're doing and how much money you will need. Okay. Okay. Now I'm going to go back to the presentation. Okay, we're back at the PowerPoint. Yes, I hope. Okay, great. So when you're doing the budget, we are limiting indirect costs to 10%. You don't have to supply backup. You're just allowed to ask for 10%. We're encouraging you to include collection component to support learning outcomes, and we are requiring a 10% match. Okay. And since these are federal funds, some things are not allowed at all. Now, it says food and drink. I got permission from my program officer at IMLS to do working lunches at trainings. You have to have permission first, and you have to make sure that if you do a training and you're asking for food for a working lunch, that it's within GSA rates and that it is actually working lunch. People stay there and you're doing learning things. It's a sensitive subject with IMLS, but it is allowable. We have 3 allowable cost tip sheets directly from IMLS, and they're right there at Lsta 2020 guidance. I did a grants webinar, a workshop at NLA, and I thought this was a really good slide, so I'm sharing it. When you're thinking about your project, this is sort of how it all works together. The budget, with the budget, you buy your inputs, which are money, staff, and time, and you transform those resources into services, and those services produce quantifiable outputs and use those outputs to measure your outcomes. So just sort of keep that in mind. And during the, I'm trying to bring chat up. I've lost chat. Sorry about that. There it is. Okay.
Hey, Lynn, this is Hope. I have a
Hi, Hope.
question.
Sure.
So on the indirect cost, I heard you say backup's not required, but do we have to put anything there? I know we have to do the 10% match, in-kind match.
No, so 10% is indirect cost is to cover your overhead, and you don't get to use that money to buy any grant-related things. That just goes to covering your overhead.
Right. So what's the benefit of putting that on the application?
Well, it depends. Some places do want indirect costs. They want those costs recovered. It's up to you. I don't think. I mean, I can't.
Used it.
Well, I don't. As the state library, Hope, I don't think you'd be able to, because all of your indirect costs are being used for maintenance of effort. But like universities have indirect cost rates negotiated, and those can be anywhere up to like 40–50% sometimes. And that means out of a $100,000 award, 30% of that just goes directly to overhead, and that leaves $70,000 for the grant itself. So in Nevada, we made the decision to cap it at 10%. At 10%, that's just standard, and you don't have to supply all of the paperwork that shows how your federally negotiated indirect cost rate was arrived at. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks.
And then, when you're writing your outcomes tend to be, I don't know, I always have problems with outcomes. I feel that many people do. But just, bear in mind that your outcomes are always aimed at your target audience, and it's moving the needle for them, right? Oh, and there's the slide. Don't forget your target audience. When you're writing your outcomes, please do not say my library will benefit by, because your target audience is your target audience. So, okay, so submit your proposal to nslaprlsta@admin.nv.gov by 5 p.m. Request a read receipt. So since proposals are required, we want to make sure that you want to make sure that we get it, right? So send it, and then make sure you get some sort of confirmation from us. Either it's me saying thank you, or me yes, I read it. We've got it. It's required, so you need to be sure that we have it. Okay. Okay, here are the deadlines. So December 6th, we want your proposal. By December 20th, we'll give you feedback. So we'll do the proposal, we'll have your proposal, we'll have the phone chat, we'll understand your project better, and then we'll give you feedback. And then you have until January 17th to submit your first draft. And again, proposal first draft. So these are all things that are in their primordial states, right? They're not finished products. So by February 14th, we will give you feedback on your first draft. And then on March 13th, your final applications are due. And then on April 10th at the council meeting, it will be an all-day council meeting. And if you've done competitive grants before, it's where you will come and you will meet council, talk to them, and they will ask you questions about your project so they can better understand what you're doing. And then they will revise their rankings based on whatever information they get from you. And you can either come in person or do that through video conference. I think it's a good thing for council to meet you and put a face to the paper. And then in early May, we'll make our award decisions, and then your projects that are funded will start July 1st. And if you want to see where these deadlines are, there's the direct link for it. It's on the LSTA apply section. Okay, so that's the proposal. Between the proposal and the first draft, I'd like to do an application webinar where we go over more in detail all of the sections of the application, but I would like group consensus on when you'd prefer that, because it's sort of a tight turnaround. The proposal feedback is, we're going to give that to you by December 20th, which is the Friday before winter break. So I can do an application webinar after that, but that would be sort of holiday period. I don't know if people will be around. I can do it right after New Year's, but that gives you a shorter window between the application webinar and when the first draft is due. Or I could do it before the proposal feedback, before December 20th. So if you want to put something in chat or send me an email on when you'd prefer that, I will take all that into consideration, and then I will send an email out telling when the application webinar is. And I'm not going to make the application webinar mandatory. This is mandatory because I wanted you to understand all the deadlines in the process. I have someone in chat, early January would work. Okay. Okay, so just keep that in mind too when you'd like this. Right now I have one vote and it's for early January. So if I don't get any dissenting opinions, it will be for right after the new year. Okay. Okay. Surprise. So for 2021, we're going to, Hope says December 20th works for her. Okay. Oh, anyway, I'll let you know. So traditionally, I think LSTA projects have been sort of one and done things. You do a project and you have a year to make it happen and get outcomes. And we've been tossing around the idea of having a multi-year project possibility. So you will spend, more time developing your project and then getting outcomes and then getting results. So just sort of keep that in the back of your head when you're thinking about next year, which is actually much closer than it seems. But anyway, this year is not multi-year. This year, competitive projects will be, you have 1 year to do your stuff and get outcomes. Okay. The LibGuide. So everything you will ever need for LSTA is going to be in this LSTA 2020 LibGuide. We have LSTA 2019, which we're right in the middle of, and things have changed a little bit. So don't get those confused because the forms are a little bit different. The deadlines are definitely different. The way to get through it from our website, go to library and then LSTA, and from LSTA you will select 2020. And then, let's see, I'm just gonna go there really quickly, share the screen. You should bookmark it. So LSTA 2020, I've added a section called available grants. Available grants used to be in the apply for a grant section, but it got really, really wordy and really, really dense. And I personally found it hard to navigate. So available grants is now its own separate tab. And this just outlines our grants. Okay. And then if you're going to apply, then you'll go to apply. And we have competitive grants, mini grants, travel to training, and application guidance. The proposal example is right there in your application and guidance. The evaluation rubric is there as well. So you'll kind of know how these different sections of your application are being scored. So everything that has anything to do with applying will be in this tab. Manage, anything that once you finally get your grant, everything that has anything to do with managing your grant will be here. And it's only half formed right now because I don't have all of the forms done, but this is where the grant manual will be. All your reports will be. The surveys are here, and I will talk about surveys in the application. No, I'm going to have a project management paperwork webinar in the spring, and we'll talk about the paperwork. But pretty much, yeah, exactly. All of the paperwork will be here in Manage. There's nothing here because the signature forms, you have to certify all sorts of things to get federal money, and I need to update those, and those have not yet been updated by IMLS because we're not quite there yet, but those will be there. Another place to have surveys. Anything from IMLS is going to be here. We have a limited English proficiency guidance that is specific to Nevada, and it just says, since these are federal funds, you will take reasonable steps to provide access to your programs and projects that are funded with LSTA dollars to people with limited English proficiency. Ebook lending advisory, there are all sorts of advisories there. Publicity, oh, yeah, we'll talk about that later. So anything about managing your grant will be here. Okay. We're almost at the end. Now we're going to go back to the PowerPoint. Okay, here is contact information. Tammy Westergaard is the state librarian, also known as the administrator. There's her email. Norma Fowler is a library consultant. There's me, the LSTA coordinator, and then there's the address for the LibGuide. Seriously, contact us whenever you want. Pick your favorite person. I know you have relationships with like all of us, but some are better, some are more tight. Anyway, call whoever you want to, email whoever you want, and we'll get your questions answered. And then finally, everyone who's popped up here in the chat or just as an attendee, we've got your name, so I know you've attended. For people viewing this as an archived webinar, you must complete this survey in order to get credit. If you're here, please complete the survey too, if you're here in person live, because again, these are the required surveys by IMLS, and they help us figure out what we should be doing better. They help us inform our future programs. Okay, that's it. Thank you. Any questions, any comments, anything, you can ask them in chat, or you can send me an email, or you are free to go. Okay. All right, I'm going to stop the recording. Thanks.